Welcome to the Daily Sprint, where product designers stretch their thinking, push new ideas, and deliver design excellence into their products one day at a time. Today we're talking about those times your design was totally wrong in a stakeholder design review, what went wrong, and how to prevent it from happening again. I'm Daryl Estabrook, 30 years into UX product design. Yes, I've fallen flat a few times. It's not the end of the world, but we're just getting started. I'm also the founder of Designy, a platform for product designers who want to design with a Y. I coach designers into leaders through real-time, interactive, product-specific guidance. Find out more and get on board with a free newsletter at designy.com. That's design with a Y.com. Well, welcome. It's episode 10. That would be 2 in binary. So, have you ever bombed a design review? It's got to be the worst feeling in the world. You've got this design that you're presenting, you have stakeholders, you go through the presentation, and silence. Or maybe it's more than silence. It depends on the stakeholders, but it's not what the expectations were. Well, it's definitely a thing we want to avoid, and we want to know how can we make our designs aligned as soon as possible. So I want to think of it this way. When we're talking about walking away from a design review that fell flat, stakeholders are not impressed, or it's not accepted, any of those things. But you walk away, this was not good, and you're like, I've designed the wrong thing. Well, I propose there is no wrong design, and let me talk through a couple stories and show you what I mean. And these didn't. Well, I would say one that happened to me, and another that happened on the product team. 2 different times, 2 different teams. These are not the only 2 times this happened. I think it's always inevitable in certain situations, but we want to get better at it going in. Be prepared for what might happen. So one website for a small organization, just a website, kind of a B2C design kickoff meeting, the typical sort of thing. Writing all sorts of notes. We even did note mind mapping, like live note taking on the whiteboard. Actually very good. That's a very good technique, even remotely, digitally, taking notes and showing people what they're saying as they're saying it. And so I went back, had everything I needed, essentially, to start the design. It was pretty straightforward. Coming back with like mood boards and branding, application into a website structure, and all of that, and sent it over, packaged it up, sent it over, and we're preparing to have the design review, and got the call, and the response actually was more. It wasn't expected. It wasn't a negative review or anything. It was more of very obvious guidance in the form of, hey, here are some websites that we really like. Can you design it like these? And the reaction on my part is like, what is going on? Like, why is it this is not in part of what we had taken notes on? It's prescriptive. We're just going to mash stuff together. And so it's like, whoa, that didn't fly. What happened? And we start to piece it out. And there's a big disconnect. It wasn't hitting. And so the question to me was, I made a lot of design decisions along the way, clearly to get to that point to where we could show screens, show alternates, things like that. But those design decisions didn't amount to alignment. And so what I ended up doing as far as solution for that is creating a rapid critique series with the client. So we called them the Pencils Down Review. And it was so rapid, we did it daily. So every day at the same time, we'd show the work, and it was pencils down. It was whatever we were in the moment, we're going to stop and we're going to critique it. And what happens when you do a genuine critique and not just an opinion reaction is you're trying to align it to your intended outcome, which I've talked about a lot before when we're talking about purpose. And once you have the purpose defined, then you can start to align these design decisions to each other and say, oh, okay, well, that supports it, that doesn't support it. And what was really neat about the doing it daily as a pencils down sort of thing, the pressure was off to create any sort of presentation or formality. It was actually a really good working session, and that was something that hadn't been done really with clients. It was always a good face forward, trying to make sure that the deliverable had some legs to it so they could shop it around, show it around. But that really took those barriers down. And again, that wouldn't have really worked. It wasn't in any way the stakeholders pushing pixels around. It was a collaborative venture. It was, here are new interpretations of what we just talked about yesterday. And in doing so, it really became more of an exploration instead of a big explosion of random things that had a lot of detail. They could actually see the progress. So that was night and day difference from kind of a total miss. And the funny thing is that ended up being a guess, right? When you're talking about designing, you're supposed to be doing things on purpose. This was a guess, and it guessed wrong. But another case in a different project, not even my review, but I just remember it so clearly. The engineer, and we had been working on this product for a while, internal application. And because it's an enterprise, there was a review board of all the systems, so engineering focused. But the one thing I found about engineers over the years is there's as much of a design process as the UX design. And it's not thought of in that same way because you're dealing with code, but the thinking behind it is very similar. And so finding engineers that think similarly with the UX process, it works so swimmingly awesome. But they had a review of all the systems that would be affected by this product, how they interact, where the data comes from, the complexities of knowing what we have to work with. And so this lead engineer put together his architecture map and all the other requirements, very technical stuff that I wouldn't really know the details of, but it looked good. It was it was a deliverable. It's kind of how I think stakeholders look at designs that we present. They're like, wow, there's a lot of stuff there. You must have worked really hard on it. But we did. And in this case, it was a very formal meeting. I wasn't in it, but it was something that you prepared for and kind of met this cross section of the engineering part of the company. But I remember clearly that he walked back into the project room, and he was not happy. He wasn't angry in any way, but very disappointed. And he walked in. What's wrong? What happened? He said, my design is wrong. And it didn't go well. So we were like, oh, okay, well, this is not good. But that struck me, that phrase really struck me, that his design was wrong. And I thought, how can a design be wrong? And of course, he went and clarified requirements, got some further understanding, especially on what they required, what they wanted, certain requirements that he had missed, not out of due diligence or anything. It just were things that he had missed. And it all worked out in the end, right? But it's that initial shock, and that really can you can say, what am I doing? What's happened? How could it be so wrong? And so while we fixed these situations, and you can fix similar situations, these are very good approaches, but this and many other cases in the past, I got to this conclusion that there's one cause for all of it, and kind of almost two symptoms of it, but always the cause. And the cause is purpose. The purpose was not clear. And the purpose is what drives the design decisions. Every design decision, whether it's a website, B2C, B2B design decision, UX and otherwise, or if it's an engineering design decision, what system talks to what and how to structure data and whatnot. All those decisions, they have to make decisions. Developers, engineers are making decisions. Those decisions are only made in order to fulfill the purpose. And the purpose, as I define it, is the intended outcome. So what is the intended outcome? Do you know what the intended outcome is of the feature or the app that you're building? And if you don't know what the intended outcome is, then design decisions that you make are arbitrary or random or optional, option-based. And so it's fascinating. It's not a matter of that the design is wrong. It's really that it's not strong. It's a weak versus strong design when you're comparing it to the purpose. If it was right or wrong, then you would have an answer somewhere that you could look up, right? It's like, well, 2 + 2 = 5. Well, that's wrong. It doesn't, it's 4, right? We can look that up. It's calculated, it's whatnot. But when we're talking about an intended outcome, like intention is the future, it's something that we want, we kind of wish, we're hoping, we're aiming, then the design is going to be, wow, that's a very strong design. That design is going to fulfill the intended outcome, and you can test it and you can verify and validate that it is. A weak design, if you have experience in your field, you can look at something and say, that is not going to work. Now, of course, you can always be incorrect about that and be proven wrong, which is hypothesis and testing and all that. But we're talking about this intuition of experience that many people have, and there is validity to it. It's a real thing. And so to say that a design is weak is like my example prior. It didn't fit the branding. It was not the message they wanted to send with their B2C website. So it was a very weak design. And the engineer, with his architecture, he missed certain connections and he missed certain systems in there. It wasn't wrong. It was very weak. And I think that's an important distinction to make because, again, right and wrong in design becomes a very subjective thing, and we get very emotional about it when it doesn't need to be. We might cause emotion through our design. That's a totally different thing. But we're talking about the assessment of the value of this design. It's weak or strong, not right or wrong. So the two things you could take away with this: purpose is the intended outcome. So when your purpose is not well understood, You need to get it clear. Vague requirements, right, are not really conducive to a strong design because you're going to end up design guessing. And that's designing by accident and not on purpose. So you need the purpose. So getting vague requirements clear. And that's a job a designer can do. In fact, if you sit down to use your tool to create a solution to the intended outcome and you're not sure what your design decision is, because you could go left or you could go right, you could choose A or B, well, you should explore those, but you should go back and get clear on those requirements. The other part is getting this feedback, actionable feedback that lets you point back to the purpose and say, oh, see, there's the gap. What we have here is weak because if we see this through, it's not going to achieve that intended outcome. But you can't have objective feedback like that, feedback that's actionable to see the gap and to know where to fix it, if it's subjective or if the requirements were clear to begin with, right? Now we don't know what we're talking about. We don't know. It's like, well, I like it. Well, I like it too. Well, I don't like it. This is nothing for the designer to take home and change anything about it. Well, I can make it look like your preference. I can make it look like your preference, but those are not compatible. So getting a actionable feedback through a formal critique, or a true critique, not a critical comment, is super valuable. And you can get that all sorts of ways. And depending on your team configuration, availability, a design team, if you're on a larger team, taking it to them because you kind of speak design, you kind of get this dimension of it, and that's a really good one. That can help see gaps in some of the more UX-y kind of ways. The product team itself, as you get to know them and work with them, a great way. Now, getting them to do a formal critique, well, that's something that you can teach them how to do, truly. But they're a really good resource. And then, because they'll have the other context of the system, of course, the stakeholders, and training stakeholders to critique is a little harder depending sometimes, but it can be done, and it should be done in order to get that actionable feedback. But they're the ones that have vision. They may be the users, and users are kind of that highest layer of critique, and they're just going to show you that it works or not. And that's the ultimate objective feedback. So take a step back. Yeah, look at this big picture. If you do bomb a design review, oh, I am so sorry. That is terrible. But dust yourself off. Take a look and ask, hey, are the requirements clear? Do I really understand the intended outcome, the purpose of this? And then who can I get to help with actionable feedback? The team, a resource. And you'll be able to see, hey, this is just weak or strong. This is not right or wrong. This is not about me necessarily. This is about the purpose we're after. So I've got a couple other things that could help you with this. I've put together some courses on Designy Academy, and it's pretty obviously titled How to Make Vague Requirements Clear. It's a really short course. You could do it in a lunch hour, probably be able to implement it in a meeting or two later that afternoon. And take a look at that, because there's some techniques in there that, like we talked about, and how you can really tease out the purpose. And then there's another course on there, Getting Design Feedback That's Actionable. It's a 30-minute video walkthrough of the formal critique process. And again, that's a thing that you can teach yourself, your team, and apply those principles with your stakeholders. So go to Designy Academy. That's academy.designy.com/courses, or just academy.designy.com, and you'll see the menu there. And check out those courses. Other ways you can get involved are to subscribe to the Daily Sprint. I love when you listen. Feel free to go to designy.com and ask a question. There's a little communication chat button in the bottom corner. There's a form there you can fill out. Just ask a question. Love to field that and see how I can help. And while you're there, just sign up for the free newsletter at designy.com. That's design.com. Thanks for listening to the Daily Sprint. Remember, today is a great day to design with a Y. See you next time.